Imagine coming home one night, only to discover your wife has been brutally murdered, and the person responsible is your own daughter. How could someone you loved, raised, and trusted hide such a dark secret? This is the story of Steve Powell, the daughter who lied, and the mother who never saw it coming. Dramatic pause, sound of sirens, and a faint heartbeat. A phone call, a scream, and in the blink of an eye, a family's life was shattered forever. Tonight, we unravel the shocking true story from Akron, Ohio, a story of lies, betrayal, a crime that no one could have imagined. Before we dive in, welcome to Minds of Murderers, the channel that uncovers the darkest true crime stories. Make sure to hit subscribe and don't forget to share your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below as we go through this chilling tale. Now let's dive in. March 3rd, 2020, Akron, Ohio. A quiet night hangs over the city, ordinary in every sense, until a single phone call shatters the calm. At the University of Mount Union, Professor Lewis sits at his desk, grading papers. The phone rings. On the other end is Brenda Powell, worried about her daughter Sydney. Brenda's voice is tight, anxious, but calm enough to reassure the professor that she is handling things. Then, without warning, a loud crash erupts through the line. A piercing scream follows, a scream so sharp, so terrified, it freezes the professor in place. The call abruptly ends. Confused, he calls back. A voice answers. "I'm fine, everything's okay," it says. But something is off. The tone, the hesitation, it isn't Brenda. The professor's heart races as realization hits. This is her daughter, Sydney, pretending to be her mother. Fear grips him. Without hesitation, he dials 911, urgency lacing every word as he explains the strange, terrifying call. Minutes later, police race to the Powell residence. Their sirens slice through the night as adrenaline pumps through their veins. They approach the house cautiously, weapons drawn. The front door shows no signs of forced entry. Still, the officers sense something is very wrong. They circle the home and spot the shattered back window, glass littered across the lawn, faint stains of blood on the frame. A break-in had been staged, or something far worse had happened inside. Flashlights pierce the darkness as officers push through the door. The smell of iron and blood hits them first, thick, unmistakable, heavy in the air. In the kitchen lies Brenda Powell, face down in a pool of blood. Her body is battered. An iron skillet is bent nearby, coated in crimson. A steak knife rests ominously beside her neck. 30 stab wounds pierce her flesh, evidence of a frenzied, violent attack. Then comes the trembling voice Moon. 19-year-old Steve Powell stands nearby, shaking violently, her hands stained in blood. She sobs uncontrollably, insisting an intruder broke in, that her mother was attacked, that she tried to help. She points to the broken window. She is terrified, panicked, but the blood on the outside of the glass tells a different story. The window had been broken after her mother was already bleeding. Officers exchange tense glances. The pieces don't fit. The scream, the phone call, the stage break-in, it all suggests a desperate attempt to cover up something far more personal. Steve Powell, the father, is still on his way, unaware of the nightmare awaiting him. As paramedics arrive to stabilize Brenda, the police begin quietly documenting the scene. Each shattered object, each streak of blood, each inconsistency in Sydney's story becomes a puzzle piece in a horrifying picture. The danger didn't come from outside the house. It came from within. And in that moment, amid flashing lights, frantic officers, and the metallic scent of blood, a terrifying truth begins to take shape. A truth no parent ever wants to imagine. Steve Powell's car screeched into the driveway, his heart pounding, every second stretching into an eternity. He had received frantic calls from the professor, from friends. Something was wrong. Something terrifying. He ran toward the house, cell phone still clutched in his hand, adrenaline making him deaf to everything else. Police had already arrived. Officers motioned him to stop, trying to shield him from the worst. But Steve's eyes darted past them, catching glimpses of the chaos inside. The kitchen, once a place of warmth and laughter, was now a scene of horror. Blood coated the countertops, the floor glistened under the harsh beam of flashlights, and there, lying face down, was Brenda Powell. Her body was battered, bruised, riddled with stab wounds. 30 violent cuts tore across her neck, and an iron skillet, bent and bloodied, lay nearby. The steak knife rested ominously close to her head. And then Steve saw her, Sydney. His daughter, 19, trembling, covered in blood, sobbing. "Dad, "It was a break-in. Someone killed Mom," she stammered. Her voice shook with terror, but something about the scene didn't make sense. Blood outside the broken back window indicated it had been shattered after the attack, contradicting Sydney's story of an intruder. The police noticed immediately. Medics rushed to Brenda, shouting instructions as they tried to stabilize her. Steve couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. The house felt like it had collapsed inward, crushing him with its silence, and its scent of iron and fear. Officers carefully secured the scene, taking photos, documenting every detail. Every object, every blood smear, every shattered fragment told a story that didn't match Sydney's frantic explanation. Detectives began quietly asking questions, their voices gentle but probing. "Steve, what do you know about today? Any arguments? Anything unusual?" He shook his head, bewildered. Sydney and Brenda had always been close. Arguments were rare, nothing violent. "She's my little girl. She would never hurt anyone." His voice cracked as the weight of possibility began to press down on him. As he watched the medics while Brenda passed him, Steve felt a chill settle over his heart. His wife was critically injured, life hanging by a thread, and the one person standing near her blood-soaked body was his daughter. The inconsistencies were impossible to ignore. The scream, the broken window, the blood patterns. Officers whispered to one another, realizing that the danger hadn't come from outside. It came from within. For Steve Powell, the night had transformed into a waking nightmare. The house that had been a sanctuary now felt like a trap. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat seemed to echo the unthinkable truth. The daughter he loved, the daughter he trusted, might have been the one who caused this horror. And as paramedics worked frantically to save Brenda, detectives quietly began piecing together the fragments of a story that would shatter everything Steve believed about his family. Detectives started piecing together Sydney's account. Her voice trembled, words spilling out in fragments. I heard a bang. Mom screamed. Someone broke in. I came back, she was on the floor. She claimed she tried to help, that she blacked out, that she didn't remember what happened next." Officers listened carefully, noting every hesitation, every contradiction. The broken back window, the blood on the outside, the timing of the scream, it didn't fit with Sydney's frantic story. And yet, her fear was real, her panic undeniable. She was a young woman in shock, struggling to explain the unexplainable. Meanwhile, Steve Powell arrived, breathless, heart racing. His daughter looked terrified, bloodied, but alive. He rushed forward, desperate to help, desperate to understand. Officers gently pulled him back, keeping him from approaching the scene. He had no idea the truth. The nightmare he feared was far darker than anything he could imagine. Paramedics worked quickly on Brenda, but Steve's attention remained fixed on Sydney. "What happened? Where's your mom?" His voice broke as panic and disbelief collided. Sydney repeated her story: a sudden attack, an unknown intruder, her frantic attempt to save her mother. She was shaking, sobbing, her body still coated in blood, claiming she didn't understand how it all happened. Detectives began questioning neighbors, collecting statements, taking in the details. No one had seen anyone enter the house. No one reported a stranger fleeing the scene. The pieces were beginning to form a grim picture. Something in Sydney's account wasn't adding up. Even the paramedics noticed the blood patterns didn't match a simple struggle with an intruder. The broken window had blood on the outside, a critical detail overlooked in Sydney's panic story. The scream that had brought the professor to call 911, the phone impersonation, the staged evidence, it all pointed towards something far more personal than an external attack. Steve's mind struggled to process the impossibility. Could the person he loved, the daughter he raised, really be at the center of this chaos? The answer loomed closer with every piece of evidence the detectives quietly documented. The house, once a place of warmth and laughter, now felt like a trap. Every object, every blood smear, every inconsistency whispered the same terrifying question: had the danger truly come from within? And in the silence that followed, Steve Powell was left clinging to hope, unable yet to grasp the dark reality forming before him. Steve Powell paced the driveway, phone pressed to his ear, heart hammering in his chest. Earlier that evening, a professor had called him, terrified, explaining that Brenda had screamed mid-conversation and the line had gone dead. Steve had called Brenda, no answer. He had called Sydney, no answer. Then, finally, a frantic voice answered. "Dad, there's been a break-in." blood everywhere. He had raced home, believing both his wife and daughter were in danger. Now, standing outside the Powell residence, adrenaline coursing, he had no idea that only one of them had truly been attacked. Inside, detectives moved with precision. They gently explained the situation to Steve, guiding him away from the kitchen, shielding him from the bloodied chaos. "Steve," one detective said carefully, "we need you to stay here for your own safety. Paramedics are taking care of Brenda." But every instinct screamed at him. He wanted to run, to see, to hold both his family members, to fix the unfixable. His eyes darted inside anyway, catching glimpses of the horror. A kitchen smeared with blood, a bent skillet on the floor, a steak knife lying ominously nearby. He felt his chest tighten, breath catching. Detectives began piecing together the timeline. They asked gentle questions. "Steve, do you know if there were arguments today? Anything unusual with Sydney or Brenda?" He shook his head, unable to speak. His daughter had always been close to her mother. Arguments were rare, small, forgettable. Nothing like this. Paramedics wheeled Brenda past him, a pale, battered body, a cruel contradiction to the woman he knew and loved. Steve's knees buckled as the weight of what was happening began to settle. The broken window, the blood outside, the chaos within, it made no sense. And yet, every piece of evidence whispered a horrifying truth. The danger hadn't come from outside. It came from someone inside the house. Steve clutched the edge of the railing, trying to steady himself. The world he had known, the safe, loving family home, had shifted into something unrecognizable, a nightmare he could not wake from. The detectives continued quietly, documenting, questioning, piecing together fragments. Each revelation edged closer to an impossible reality, that his own daughter, the one he loved, might be responsible for his wife's near-fatal injuries. And in that moment, Steve Powell realized that the night's events were not just a home invasion. They were collapse of everything he had believed about his family, the shattering of a trust that could never be repaired. Down at the police station, detectives began piecing together Sydney Powell's life beyond the bloodied kitchen. They spoke with her close friend and former roommate, Lauren, hoping for insight. What they learned painted a picture of a young woman quietly unraveling. Lauren spoke slowly, carefully, almost as if speaking louder might summon the nightmare to life. "Sydney, she'd been kicked out of college weeks ago," she admitted. "But she never told anyone, not her parents, not me. She just kept pretending she was still enrolled. She made it seem normal, like everything was fine." The detectives listened intently. Sydney's lies weren't small. They were extensive, deliberate, and dangerous. She had spun 2 stories simultaneously, one for her parents, one for her friends. To her parents, she was still a model student, trying to figure out her path. To her friend, she was struggling, searching for purpose, but still coping. No one knew the truth. Lauren continued, describing Sydney's mental state. She was anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, sometimes. She didn't want to disappoint her mom, especially Brenda. They were incredibly close. Brenda was everything to her. Lauren's voice faltered as the memory of Sydney's smiles and laughter clashed with the horror of that night. Detectives began connecting the dots. The lies, the fear of exposure, the mounting pressure, could have led to violence? Could the confrontation between mother and daughter have escalated beyond anything anyone imagined? Lauren's testimony also revealed a subtle warning. "We tried to help her. I tried to be there to support her, but she shut down. She didn't want anyone to know how badly she was struggling." Her eyes grew distant. I never could have imagined that something like this could happen." In that moment, the detectives realized that Sydney's attack on her mother may not have been entirely impulsive. The emotional pressure, the fear of being found out, the desperation to hide the truth, it had all been building quietly, invisibly, until it erupted in violence. And the chilling question became clear. Had Brenda discovered the lies? And had Sydney, in a moment of panic or rage, attacked the woman she claimed to love above all else? Steve Powell, still reeling outside the hospital, had no idea. Every revelation, every hidden secret, was a step closer to a truth too devastating for him to imagine. The person he trusted most, his daughter, might not just have been hiding the truth. She might have been the one who shattered his family forever. Detectives started unraveling the tangled web Sydney had spun. Every detail, every lie, every hidden secret became a piece of the puzzle. They learned that Brenda had been on the phone with Sydney's college professor at the exact moment she was attacked. The professor had called to discuss Sydney's academic progress, but for the first time, Brenda heard a truth she hadn't known. Sydney wasn't attending classes, her grades were failing, and the university had dismissed her. Brenda's shock was instantaneous. Mid-conversation, she screamed. The line went dead. When the professor called back, a voice answered, pretending to be Brenda. But the tone, the hesitation, the subtle inflections revealed the lie immediately. It wasn't Brenda. It was Sydney. Detectives began piecing together the implications. Sydney had carefully constructed two realities. One she presented to her parents, filled with optimism and normalcy, and another she presented to her friends, filled with struggle and stress. Both worlds were false. The pressure had been mounting for weeks. Sydney's anxiety, frustration, and fear of disappointing her mother had reached a breaking point. The confrontation with Brenda, the sudden revelation that her lies were exposed, triggered a violent response. Every lie, every hidden detail, now had deadly consequences. The staged break-in, the phone impersonation, the frantic claims of an intruder. Sydney had tried to cover her tracks, but the evidence didn't lie. Blood patterns, the broken window, and the timeline of events told a story more sinister than anyone had imagined. Detectives knew they were dealing with more than a reckless act. This was a collision of fear, guilt, and desperation. Sydney had crafted her own narrative, one meant to protect herself from exposure, but in doing so, she had crossed an unforgivable line. And now, as police quietly documented each detail, the reality became clear. The two lives of lies, the one told to her parents, the one told to her friends, had collided in the kitchen of the Powell home, resulting in a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. Steve Powell, still outside the hospital, clutched at hope, unaware that every lie his daughter told had just cost his family everything. Detectives stood in the Powell kitchen, examining every detail. The chaos told a story far darker than a home invasion, one that only the perpetrator could have orchestrated. Evidence pointed to a sudden, violent confrontation. Sydney's lies were unraveling. Her mother, Brenda, had discovered the truth. Sydney wasn't attending classes, had been dismissed, and had been lying to everyone for weeks. In a moment of panic or rage, Sydney reacted. Investigators reconstructed the scene. First, a struggle. Brenda tried to defend herself, but Sydney struck her with a heavy iron skillet. The blow was devastating, sending Brenda to the floor. Then came the knife, a single steak knife, plunged over 30 times into her mother's neck. Each strike precise, frenzied, deadly. Afterward, Sydney attempted to cover her tracks. She staged a break-in, smashing the back window to create a story of an intruder. But she overlooked a critical detail. Blood had dripped onto the outside of the glass. A small telltale clue that betrayed her carefully constructed lie. She then picked up the phone and impersonated her mother, attempting to delay the call for help. The professor had suspected immediately it wasn't Brenda speaking. But the seconds that passed were enough to set the chain of events in motion. 911 calls, police rushing to the scene, medics attempting to save Brenda's life. Everything pointed to a tragic conclusion. Sydney's panic and desperation had erupted into violence, transforming a lie into a crime that could not be undone. The house, once a place of warmth and family, had become a stage for betrayal, fear, and death. Outside the home, Steve Powell waited, unaware of the full horror. Inside, detectives had pieced together the chilling truth. The threat hadn't come from an intruder. It had come from within. From the daughter he had raised, loved, and trusted. And with that realization, the story of deception, desperation, and violence was laid bare, a story that would forever haunt a family and a community. Steve Powell sat in the sterile quiet of the police station, hands trembling, mind racing. His heart was heavy with fear, confusion, and hope. Hope that his wife would survive. Hope that his daughter was just a frightened victim. Detectives approached him slowly, their faces somber. They didn't rush. They couldn't. The news they carried was beyond comprehension, beyond expectation. "Steve," one of them began, voice gentle but firm, "we need to tell you something about your wife." Steve's stomach nodded. Is she okay?" The detective took a breath. "I'm so sorry. Brenda Powell didn't survive her injuries. She passed away at the hospital." The world seemed to tilt beneath Steve. His knees went weak. No, that can't be." His voice cracked as the weight of reality hit. His beloved Brenda, his partner, the mother of his children, was gone. Then the detectives leaned closer, lowering their voices. There's something else, something even more difficult. Evidence suggests Sydney, your daughter, may be responsible. Time froze. Steve's mind couldn't process the words. No, that's not possible. She's my little girl. She would never. But the evidence was undeniable. The blood patterns, the broken windows staged after the attack, the phone impersonation, the confession of lies, the witness accounts, they all pointed to Sydney. Steve's son, watching silently from the corner, gripped his father's arm. The family, once whole, was fracturing before their eyes. The detectives left Steve with the unbearable truth, giving him space to process the unimaginable. His wife murdered. His daughter, the perpetrator. A son caught in the middle. A family shattered forever. The Powell home, once a sanctuary, now existed only in memory. Trust was gone. Security was gone. And for Steve Powell, every heartbeat carried the echo of betrayal and grief that would never fade. Outside the walls of that station, life continued, oblivious. But inside, a father's world had ended in a single devastating revelation. The person he loved most, the child he had nurtured, had destroyed the very family he had fought to protect. The courtroom was heavy with tension. Cameras flashed, reporters murmured, and every seat seemed to hold the weight of tragedy. Sydney Powell sat in the defendant's chair, her eyes vacant, her hands folded, attempting to appear fragile, overwhelmed, and perhaps innocent. Her defense team painted a story of blackout and insanity. They claimed Sydney had no memory of the attack, that she had acted in a dissociative state, overwhelmed by stress and panic. Every word was calculated to evoke sympathy, to convince the jury that this was a momentary lapse, not premeditated murder. But the evidence was damning. The investigators' timeline, the blood patterns, the phone impersonation, the stage break-in, all pointed to a conscious, deliberate act. Witnesses testified about Sydney's long history of lies, her anxiety, and her mounting desperation. Lauren, her former roommate, recounted how Sydney had hidden her dismissal from college and carefully manipulated those around her to maintain the illusion of normalcy. Prosecutors argued with precision, painting a chilling picture. The attack wasn't random. It wasn't a mistake. It was a violent attempt to silence Brenda Powell and cover up weeks of deception. The jury could see the contradictions in Sydney's story, the impossibility of the staged intruder scenario, and the calculated nature of her actions. Hours turned into days. The courtroom became a theater of grief, disbelief, and horror. Every witness, every piece of evidence, every detail painted Sydney not as a victim of circumstance, but as a young woman who had allowed panic and deceit to explode into murder. The jury deliberated. The weight of the evidence, the clarity of the timeline, the patterns of deception, it was undeniable. Sydney Powell was found guilty on multiple counts. 2 counts of murder, 1 count of felonious assault, 1 count of tampering with evidence. When the sentence was read, life in prison with a possibility of parole after 15 years, the room was silent. Sydney's face betrayed no emotion, but outside the courthouse, whispers of horror and disbelief swept through friends, family, and the community alike. For Steve Powell, the verdict was another layer of devastation. His wife was gone. His daughter was guilty. And the family he had cherished for decades would never be whole again. This trial revealed the terrible consequences of deception, the fragility of trust, and the irreversible impact of a single moment of rage. Sydney Powell's life was forever changed, and in her wake, she left grief, shattered hearts, and a story that would haunt Akron for years to come. The Powell family home was quiet now, but the silence was heavy with loss. Brenda Powell, a loving mother, mentor, and the heart of the family, was gone, murdered by the very daughter she had adored and protected. Steve Powell moved through the empty rooms, each corner a memory of laughter, shared meals, and quiet evenings. Every object, every sound, reminded him of the life that had been ripped away. The love of his life, gone in an instant, and the daughter he raised, condemned to spend years behind bars. Sydney Powell, meanwhile, began her sentence. Her life, once full of potential, was now confined within prison walls. Her youth stolen, her future uncertain, she faced the reality of her actions and the irreversible pain she had caused. The lies that had seemed harmless, her faked college enrollment, her manipulated reality, had escalated to murder, shattering everything she had known. Outside the prison gates, Steve and his son grieved. They grieved not only for Brenda, but for the daughter they had loved and lost in a different way. The community mourned, friends mourned, and the story of a family torn apart by deception and violence spread, a chilling reminder of how quickly trust could be broken. The tragedy left questions that would never fully be answered. What drove Sydney to such extremes? Could the lies have been confessed before they escalated? Could a family, so close, have been saved from this disaster? For Steve Powell, there was no closure, only memory. Memory of Brenda's warmth, Sydney's laughter before it turned into horror, and the family that had been whole once. For Sydney, there would be regret, confinement, and the unending weight of her choices. This was the story of a lie too big to confess, a confrontation too sudden, and a moment of rage that destroyed an entire family. A story of grief, betrayal, and irreversible consequences. The Powell family would never be the same. And in the minds of those who knew them, this story would echo for years to come, a chilling reminder that the most dangerous threats sometimes come from those we love the most.